Hey, I'm Sean. This is my channel, AckSour. I'm here to talk to you about homemade sourdough. And the first thing I want to talk about is my starter. I started the starter back in November, and I basically feed it once a day or every other day if I'm not going to bake. And that has helped it basically stay, as you can see right here. Um, at the very beginning, I would say I tried sourdough for about a year ago, and it frustrated me so much I could not get it down, even with books and reading online, so I kind of gave it up. I recently took it back, trying to make it work in October, November, and I feel like my starter with daily feedings finally took hold and started to become stronger and live and active in about 2 weeks. So it takes a little bit longer than people say. Some people say, oh, in 3 days you might have something, or in 5 days you might have something. For me, it took about 2 weeks. I am on Nantucket. I don't know if the air is a little bit different. We're pretty humid here most of the time, so maybe that has something to do with it. So yesterday, I posted a video of me feeding my starter, and I took it out of the fridge. I'll keep it in the refrigerator for 3 or 4 days if I'm not planning on baking. I took it out. I fed it 50-50 with water and flour, and I did that in the morning, and I also did that in the evening. This is the next day. So I'm going to start an Autolyse, which is the beginning of the bulk fermentation process, without salt added to it. Salt will slow down the fermentation process, and for right now, to get it going, I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to not add salt, and I'm going to let the bulk ferment start for probably an hour or two to get it going and to get it active. So I actually mix my batch of bread in a regular mixing bowl. This one's really great because it has a rubber bottom so it doesn't slide. I also have a digital scale that I always use in grams. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add about 700 grams of water. When I add the salt in a couple hours, I'm going to add a little bit more water. That's why I'm only adding about 700 grams right now. I'll add between 50 and 100 grams. The more moisture in your dough, the kind of tougher it is to get it into shape, or it takes a little bit longer to ferment to kind of build its strength, build the tension, build the gluten structures, which will allow for airy, hold its shape. A lot of people say, like, hey, my dough became flat, and I have found that an Autolyse a few hours before adding salt kind of helps build that strength. So this is my starter. I am basically going to pour it in to the water, and I'm going to add 200 grams of my starter to the water. So this is what I do. So the starter is, I would say there's, 4 ounces or so left in this. I'll add a couple spoonfuls of flour and a couple spoonfuls of water, and it just continues to ferment, especially if I'm planning on baking in the next day or two. If not, I'll add a spoonful of flour and a spoonful of water and throw it in the refrigerator. It's good for 4 to 5 days, no problem. So right now I have my starter, which is floating in the water. I fed it last night, and I'll mix it up a little bit, and I'm going to add 1,000 grams of flour total. Now I'm using Arrowhead organic all-purpose flour, and we're also using organic rye flour. The rye flour, I'm going to add about 100 grams, which would make it a 10% rye. And then the organic AP, the 900 grams. It's okay to get your hands dirty. You know, I'm a little bit short on regular flour, so I'm going to just substitute it with more rye to equal 1,000 grams, because that's what the recipe is based off of. There we go. So it's going to be a little more rye, but I'm okay with that. It gives a good flavor. It gives it good depth, earthy. I always wet my hands before I mix, but I always mix with my hands. I'm not really using a tool. So this is the water at 700 grams. My starter is 200 grams and 1,000 grams of flour. I used, I would say, 300 grams of rye and 700 grams of organic all-purpose. I use organic. You don't have to. People have great success just using, you know, your regular large brand flours, and it's just, we like organic here in our household. So basically I'm gonna mix this until it's like mostly combined. It doesn't have to be crazy combined. You don't have to knead it for 10 minutes or whatever. So we're gonna mostly combine it, get most of it off our hands if we can real quick. And I'm basically gonna put a cover on this and let it sit for about 2 hours. And we'll come back to it, and we'll add salt and a little bit more water, and we'll start our folding in the bowl, and we'll go from there. Thanks a lot, guys.